Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Rachakodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of 3rd Maccabees, the 2nd chapter. And when we read in the book of 1st Maccabees, right, at that point, Ptolemy ends up winning this war, right, the Battle of Raphia against Antiochus III. He goes around the neighboring areas, visiting their temples and giving them gifts and so on to make sure they're all loyal to him. And then he comes to Jerusalem. Everything is good at first, and then he decides he wants to go into the holy place, the holiest of holies, where only the high priest is allowed. At this point, panic sets in. Israelites start rushing into the street. They're calling upon the Lord. They're praying, and this guy is still, in his mind, he says, "I'm going." So that's pretty much where we're at leading into 3rd Maccabees, the 2nd chapter. Then the high priest Simon knelt in front of the temple, extended his hands, and offered his prayer in a dignified manner. "Lord, Lord, King of the heavens and master of all creation, holy among the holy ones, only ruler, almighty, pay attention to us. We are being crushed by an evil and impure man, caught up in his own arrogance and power. You are the creator of all things, and the just master who rules over all. You judge those who act with violence and arrogance. You destroyed those who did evil in the past, even giants. The giants trusted in their bodily strength and boldness, but you destroyed them in a great flood." And this is referring, when he says giants, he's referring to those prior to the flood. Okay, remember, even in the book of Genesis, it says they were giants in the earth, which, it's not talking about like 200,000 feet tall people. All right. But in Genesis, when you read about the giants, it's going into the sons of God, which when you go into the word giants, it goes back to, I believe, the Hebrew Nepal, which is fallen ones, right? Because they had left that divine state they had due to disobedience, right? But here, and you can deduce this because he says that you destroy them in a great flood, right? And this is referring to what those before the flood, right? The pre-flood era, which chances are people were also much bigger during that time as well. So it says here, the people of Sodom acted arrogantly and were notorious for their wicked deeds. You destroyed them with fire and sulfur, making them an example to others for all time. When the arrogant ruler of Egypt enslaved your holy people Israel, you tested him with many varied punishments, right? The plagues of Egypt. You made your power known. Indeed, you made known your great strength. When the ruler of Egypt pursued Israel with chariots and a multitude of people, you overwhelmed him with the depth of the sea. But those who trusted in you, the one who holds power over all creation, these people you brought safely through the sea. And this you can read about in the book of Exodus. And when they saw your powerful work, they praised you, the Almighty. Although you, King, created the whole wide earth, you chose this city and set this place apart for your name. Though you don't need anything, and he's talking about the Jerusalem and the temple. You made it wonderful, giving it a splendid appearance, and established its order for the reputation of your great and honored name. Because you loved the house of Israel, you promised that you would hear our prayer if we came to this holy place and prayed whenever we experienced a setback or were overwhelmed with distress. Indeed, you are faithful and true. Whenever our ancestors were hard-pressed or humiliated, you helped them and rescued them from great hardships. See now, Holy King, how we are being afflicted and have been subjected to our enemies and are weakened to the point of helplessness because of our many and great sins. But in the midst of our calamity, this arrogant and unholy man is determined to insult the holy place dedicated on earth to your glorious name. And here he's referring to Ptolemy. For human beings can't enter your dwelling place, the heaven of heavens, But since you were pleased for your glory to rest among your people Israel, you set this place apart. So he's saying, I mean, technically we can't just fly up into the heavens where the Lord is. But the Lord, being pleased to dwell with us, decided to set apart this place in the land of Israel, to place the temple where at least His presence, you know, would descend to that place, and then we would be able to, you know, basically have that contact, right? Obviously through the proper ordinances and channels He has set up. Don't take vengeance on us because of the impurity of these people. Don't call us to account because of their pollution, so that the lawless don't boast in their hearts or rejoice in the arrogance of their tongues, saying, we trampled the house of holiness, just as the houses of idols are trampled. And that's kind of what Ptolemy said in the first chapter, right? He said, look, how come I was able to go into the temples of all these other places, but when I come in here, you're telling me I can't go into the holy place? So here the high priest is praying to the Lord, saying, Lord, like, show your power. Let them know that there's a difference. There's a separation. Don't allow them to be able to defile our temple, to go around and boast and say, yeah, they had the power to tread upon our holy place, just like they did all these other temples for the idols of these other nations. Wipe away our sins and scatter our faults to the winds, and reveal your compassion in this hour. Let your mercies quickly overtake us. Put praises in the mouths of those who are downcast and crushed in their spirits, granting us peace. Then the God who watches over all things, the first Father of all, holy among the holy ones, heard this lawful prayer and scourged the one who had claimed too much for himself in his violence and arrogance. And that's Ptolemy. So the Lord heard this prayer and he said, okay, you about to find out. God shook him this way, that as a reed is shaken by the wind, with the result that he lay helpless on the ground. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think in the book of Josephus there's an account of this as well, which goes into some detail here. But basically, it's kind of like he caught like a stroke or whatever the case is. But before he was able to enter into that holy place, the Lord hit him with this. And as it says, he was basically, he just dropped to the ground, right? It says his limbs were paralyzed and he was unable to speak since he was struck by a just judgment. So he was cooked. At that point, he was just like a statue, just dropped. His friends and bodyguards saw that the punishment that had seized him was severe. Fearing that even his life might fail, they quickly dragged him out, since they were terror-stricken. After a while, the king recovered, and even though he had been punished, he didn't change his heart and mind at all, but went away issuing bitter threats. So the Lord, he didn't die, right? But when he came back to himself, you know, then he started that, oh, whoa, you just wait. You know, you just wait. You think this is over? This ain't over. You know who you just did this to? Do you know who you just made an enemy out of? You know, that's those bitter threats. When he had returned to Egypt, he added to his evil deeds with the assistance of his drinking companions and friends, who were strangers to everything just. So remember, we read in the first chapter the history that told me he was more of like a, you know, he liked partying and those kinds of things, less administrative and all of that. So he goes back to Egypt, he's drinking with his friends and so on. And these people, as it says, they're strangers to everything just, meaning that like they're far from doing the right thing. They're companions with wickedness. He wasn't satisfied with his innumerable indecent acts, but he also advanced to such a degree of impudence that he circulated false reports in the various districts. Many of his friends took note of the king's purpose and followed his lead. So basically, he started to spread, because remember, you had Israelites, at this point, a large amount of Israelites in Egypt, right? Places mainly, notably Alexandria, Egypt. You had a large community of Israelites there. So when Ptolemy, being the ruler of Egypt, went back to Egypt, he basically started to push this propaganda against the Israelites that were there, that, oh, you know, as it says, false reports against them, which we're going to read into it. And his friends basically continued and they followed the same lead. He proposed to spread blame publicly against the Jewish nation. He set up a stone near the tower in the courtyard with the following inscription carved upon it: None who refuse to sacrifice are to enter into their sanctuaries. In addition, all the Jews are to be registered and their property cataloged. Those who object are to be taken by force and put to death. So everybody has to be, as it says, registered, your property, basically everything is tracked for all the Jews that are there. Those who are registered are to be branded on the body by fire with the ivy leaf sign of Dionysus. Basically saying pledge allegiance to Dionysus. And you have to have the mark, the branding on you. It's interesting, right? The mark. So basically the mark of Dionysus is to show that you, as it says, are aligned to them. It says here, and are also to be assigned to their former limited civic status, basically being second-class citizens in Egypt, not being free citizens like everybody else. And this is because he was angry, taking out his wrath on the Jews that were there in Egypt. But so as not to seem hateful to all, he added, but if any of them should prefer to join those who have been initiated into the mysteries, these are to enjoy political rights equal to the Alexandrians. So basically he's saying if you're willing to, basically sell out, right? You're willing to join our side, live like us, be as it says, registered and branded and show your allegiance, then we'll give you equal rights to all the rest of the Alexandrians. You're not going to be of a lower class. Now, some Jews, while pretending to detest the steps to be undertaken for the city's religion, readily surrendered themselves to share in great fame through their association they would have with the king. So you had some that were like, oh, this is BS. Man, I can't believe they're making us do this. But then they're like, yeah, let's go ahead and get this done. I'm trying to get that comfortable life. But the honorable majority were strong and didn't depart from their religion. They bravely tried to save themselves from being registered by resorting to bribes in exchange for their lives, right? So they would, look, some of them were rich, right? Look, I'll pay you this, just act like, you gave me the branding, I'll just paint something on my, that kind of thing. Like when they had the CV out, people were getting the cards and trying to find ways to not, do it. But it says here, verse 33, they remained hopeful of obtaining help, and they looked with contempt on those Jews who had deserted them. This is like during the time of First Maccabees, right? When you had Jews that went and started living after the heathen and deserted their ways under the threat of Antiochus. So similarly, these Jews that deserted, you had those that remained faithful, looking at them with, as it says, contempt. They considered those who gave in to be enemies of the Jewish nation and no longer associated with them or offered them assistance. And that brings us to the end of the book of 3rd Maccabees, the 2nd chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Rachak Kodesh. And until next time, Shalom.